Hello, fellow Rebel Capitalists. Hope you are well. Welcome to this evening's live stream. Super stoked to be here, answer some of your questions. Want to remind you guys that from an investing standpoint and a personal freedom and liberty standpoint, we are in very tumultuous times, extreme volatility, and there's no better place to be if you want to build wealth and thrive in a world of out of control central banks and big governments than Rebel Capitalist Pro. That's the online investing forum service that I have with my good friends Chris McIntosh and everybody's favorite Lynn Alden, among others. Brent Johnson's over there, Patrick Sresna, a few other people. So check that out this evening. There's a $1 trial offer that Gene, my marketing guy, usually has. You can get it at georgegammon.com/pro. Once again, that's georgegammon.com/pro. All right, guys. And by the way, I've got to do a live stream exclusively for members next, and they can ask their specific questions, and I answer them directly to the best of my ability. We always do that next after the public live stream on Sunday nights. So just an FYI. All right, but let's get into your questions for this evening. Let me go to the top of the feed. I'm doing this tonight on a desktop computer. It's nice. I don't have to kind of look down. I can look more up and better on my back and my neck. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but I got this new gamer chair. I had one of those office chairs and it was really uncomfortable. And I went out, I thought, why don't I get one of these gamer chairs? Because I guess those guys sit down for long periods of time and you'd think those would be very comfortable. Boy, I tell you what, it sure is. This thing is awesome. Anyway, all right. Jeff says, question, do you think they are pushing young people towards socialism on purpose? When I listen to Josh, he's got no idea how hard younger guys can work. When I listen to Josh, he's got no idea how hard these younger guys can work. Josh is the hardest working kid or one of the hardest working kids I've ever seen. Let me see here. Do you think they're pushing young people towards socialism on purpose? Yeah, I don't think it's accidental for sure. I don't know that it's some, top-down scheme. I think that the Davos types definitely encourage it, but it's I don't think you can isolate just one thing. It's like, which snowflake was the one that caused the avalanche? I don't know. It's all of them combined. So it's not just the influence of the, let's say, central planners with the global elite, but it's within the mainstream media, it's the education system, and then they come out, they're teachers, and they believe in let's say, the principles of socialism, and then they teach it to their students as though it's matter of fact. And then when they get out of school, or their parents have some ideology, and usually they start picking teams. Usually that team for a teacher is the left, and we get more and more tribal as a society. And I think a lot of it has to do with losing religion as well, because I'm a Christian. I've said that many times. That's the way I was brought up. But regardless of whether you're a Christian, Muslim, Catholic, atheist, people need some sort of higher purpose in their life. And can you find that without religion? Sure, I'm sure you can. But if you just completely eliminate it from all aspects of life very quickly, and when I mean quickly, I mean in a span of 20, 30 years, it leads a lot of people with a void that they don't know how to fill, because they didn't recognize the place that, or the benefit that religion had in their life as far as giving them that kind of higher purpose, and they didn't know how instrumental it was. And when I say they, I'm kind of talking about society. I'm sure, I'm 49 years old, so I'm Gen X. And those of you who are my age, I'm sure you remember back in the 1970s and 1980s, and it was even more, to a higher degree, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, I'm sure. But religion was just a part of I would say most people's life. I was gonna say, maybe not most people, but yeah, I would say most people, for sure, to a certain degree. And it just became less and less and less in aggregate total, or as a total percentage of the population. And I think that void was filled with politics. And this is why you see, one of the main reasons you see such a massive divide today. So my point is, these teachers that are teaching the young kids, they're just, leftism, or whatever you want to call it, progressivism, liberalism. It's not usually using the term correctly, but socialism. This has become their religion, and of course, they're going to try to convince their students to take up the same religion, to take up the same causes, because it's to them, this is not just about politics. This is about life. It's about saving the planet. And so now I'm talking about the useful idiots, and I don't use that term disparagingly. These are people that truly do have good intentions, but they're just misguided. Where the global elite, I don't think they have good intentions. I think they're using the useful idiots, and they know exactly what's going on. And they may claim to care about climate change, as an example, but they don't. They just care about usurping power and control. They just care about decreasing population growth and reducing energy. And um, they're megalomaniacs. They're, as my father used to say, they're sick in the head. So, I don't know who said it. I know I'm going way off on a tangent here, and I'll come back, but I think this is very important to discuss. I don't know if it was Milton Friedman, maybe Thomas Sowell. It's one of these individuals that said the true dangerous dictator is someone who buys his own BS. Is someone who truly believes what he's saying. So in this example, and I probably shouldn't say this on YouTube because it's going to get immediately banned. But the individual, I can't remember if it was Soul or Milton Friedman or one of those people. They use the example of Hitler and Mussolini. They said Hitler is an example of someone that truly believed what he was saying, and that made him 10 times, 1,000 times, whatever, more dangerous than Mussolini, who might not really have believed what he said. He's just kind of a street thug that was trying to usurp power and control just because he's a megalomaniac. The point was, neither are good, but I'll take the megalomaniac any day. The person you really got to be scared of is the person that has these just twisted beliefs, but truly sees them as the only way out. They're truly acting upon their beliefs, which they believe are good. They believe they're a martyr. And again, obviously they're sick in the head, they're twisted. But that's where, Mussolini, you sit him down, he's like, yeah, I mean, this stuff, it's kind of cool. And, this fascism thing, it's, it's good we promote it, but yeah, hey, listen, it helps me be dictator. Where you have that same conversation with, the guy in Germany, and it would be, this is something that he would believe to his core. And modern, you can see that in modern the modern movie with Thanos. I forgot you guys probably know the name of the movie here, but Thanos pretty much echoed what the global elite talk about. That there's just too many people on the planet, not enough resources, and Thanos's view was, well, I'll just kill half the people and problem solved, and then we're back at an equilibrium point, and that's beneficial for everyone involved. And he truly believed that those are the people that are really dangerous. Does Joe Biden really believe what he's saying? I don't. I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. And is Joe Biden dangerous? Maybe, but not that much. You know, uh, again, I think if I had to guess, and I don't know for sure, obviously, I can't get in the head of someone, um, and I think that's dangerous in and of itself. But if I had to guess, Klaus believes his own BS. He truly believes what he's saying. Uh, if I had to guess, someone like maybe Benioff, I don't know. I think he might be just more under the ether and kind of he's like a Goebbels type. He's just someone that is kind of an acolyte and just was kind of awestruck by the leader type, and therefore he just kind of fell in line and became a true disciple. Um, then you go down the list of people, and you get to the people that are truly believe what they're saying, and then it goes down the line to then you get to the Hillary Clinton types, which I think are just saying whatever she needs to say to get power and control, and then you go down to the next level with the useful idiots and like the media, uh, the education system, the entertainment business, and then maybe the average Joe and Jane that's unfortunately influenced by the useful idiots in the media, entertainment, and education. I think, I've done presentations on this, and that's kind of how I see it in my mind. But anyway, let's get back. So that's the first part of your question, long-winded answer there. And I'm sorry for going off on a tangent, but I think it's important that we kind of think that stuff through. As far as Josh, I think he's got a great idea how hard younger guys can work because he's one of those guys that's working really, really hard. He likes to sit at home, make TikTok videos. Dude, if that's your view of Josh, you have no idea what you're talking about. No offense, Jeff, but if you think that's what Josh does, or that's all Josh does, you're you're out to lunch, my friend. Uh, yeah, I wish I could have like a little 5-minute clip of everything that Josh does during the day, and this is what you think. You would be extremely surprised and humbled, and I think kind of put in your place there. Not to be disrespectful, but yeah, you don't. You're way out in right field when it comes to Josh. If I'm understanding what you're implying correctly here. If I'm not, I apologize. Question: investing 10%, 20% in portfolio of farmland, which pays annual rent, hopefully good return, good idea. I don't like it, but uh, why don't I like it? It's just illiquid. It's very liquid. Um, I don't know why. I mean, and plus it's over. A lot of it's overpriced now. I don't know. Maybe if there was some sort of arbitrage play where you could buy farmland in a place where labor's super cheap, like Colombia, and then grow something that is a commodity, like a blueberry, something like that, almond, walnut, and then import it to the United States. That might be a good business. But farmland, renting it out to a farmer, yeah. But what's your yield going to be? I don't know, 3-4%, and you can get that on a treasury bill right now. So I don't know. I mean, I guess farmland would be able to most likely go up with inflation. Um, T-bills not going to go up with inflation, but there's risks there, and the main thing I just don't like is the lack of liquidity. So maybe 3%, 5%. Now I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I might do if I had that opportunity. Maybe 3, 5, but 10, 20. I just I for me that's the and you got to realize you're talking to a person that has quite literally made money in every single real estate transaction I have ever made since 2012, except when I bought an illiquid piece of land and I got my butt handed to me. So I'm kind of jaded there. I've got the illiquidity PTSD. So take it for what it's worth. Do you think decentralized dollar system can come out of this crisis? My theory is DeFi side actually have plenty of stable coin that are offered low interest rates. The DeFi side actually have plenty of stable coins that are offered at low interest rates. See, what I struggle with here is how how is that better? And the reason I ask that is because from people to move from our centralized system to a decentralized dollar system, it's got to be significantly better. Why? Because of the network effect the current system has. You know, when Bitcoiners always talk about, we'll call them crap coins to keep it family friendly. One of their main arguments that a crap coin can never compete with Bitcoin is because of the network effect that Bitcoin already has. And it's interesting they say that because the greatest network effect we have ever seen in human history is the United States dollar. So if Bitcoin is going to shun all competitors because of this network effect, you could argue that the dollar will shun Bitcoin for the exact same reason. Now, I would say that in order to break down that network effect, what you're introducing must be, let's say, 100 times better, and then you got a shot. But if it's the same, or if it's only twice as good, probably not. So I don't know how a decentralized dollar system would be significantly better. Now I understand as far as cross border payments and but that again the crypto types they make a big deal of that and I get it. You know you've got I don't know what the numbers are, but let's just say $100 billion a year. Okay, I mean, but that's not really that's not something that can compete as far as that perk or that benefit. That can't compete with the Eurodollar system. I mean, you're talking about a system that's 40, 50, probably more $1 trillion a year. And yes, it would be nice if people could send money from the United States to Mexico or Guatemala without having to pay a massive price. And listen, I would love to be able to transfer dollars from the United States down to Colombia without having to do a wire. And it takes 2 or 3 days, and you've got to tell the bank when to switch the dollars into pesos and blah 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 blah. And then you got to file something with the bank, with your broker, and it's a pain in the butt. So, but I only have to do it once every 6 months. So again, I see the benefits, but I don't know that it's 100 times better. Maybe it is. Maybe I just don't get it, and I'm open to that. But for the way I see it now, I just I'm not sure. And then even from a standpoint of like free market capitalism, freedom and liberty, I don't know that. See, one of the main problems with something that's decentralized is the the lending, not just the lending component, but the ability to have a fluid money supply. And I know a lot of people, say, "Oh, well, the money supply should never increase. You should have a set money supply, 21 million, let's say, and that's it." The- I love those people because I philosophically I'm completely aligned with them, but they really haven't thought that one through, in my opinion. Because if you think it through, you see how that would lead to some big problems. And I get it; it would most likely eliminate the boom bust cycle for sure. But the question is, even with fractional reserve banking, let's say, or even if you're able to create additional currency units, um, i- still you're looking at you're not looking at that big of a boom bust cycle that is created. And so then it's just a cost benefit analysis. Is the additional growth received with allowing the money supply to grow along with productive activity? That's the key here. The MMT people get it right to a certain degree. And it is true that there would be no limit on the amount of currency that you could create as long as the amount of goods and services increased at the same rate. That's the catch, right? And that's what they get wrong because they say, "Oh, well, we can do that, or we can increase the amount of goods and services by just having the government come in and employ all these people that aren't currently employed. We'll have a jobs guarantee program, and then we'll print a lot more money, and we won't have inflation because all these people that were unemployed, now managed by the government, will somehow be incredibly productive, create all these goods and services, and then that will wipe out the consumer price increases that would have happened if goods and services stayed the same, but yet the money supply increased, so the currency units increase. So you see, I always go back to the 1800s, and I think the best system. And so there is no perfect system. I think we have to start by understanding because I don't care if it's Bitcoin, I don't care what it is. It's going to be managed by human beings, and human beings are fallible. Human beings are imperfect, to say the least. And we live in a highly volatile, highly imperfect world. So even if you have a perfect system, even if you have a perfect money, like let's say Bitcoin is, let's say gold, same thing. Even if you have a perfect money, it's still going to be controlled by imperfect people in an imperfect world. Therefore, that perfect money will still be imperfect. It's just the way it is. And I know the gold bugs like to say, "Oh, that's the solution, that's the solution." And it is. It sure it is. Or Bitcoiners like to say, "Oh, this is the solution." Right, but they forget at the end of the day, it's not just Bitcoin. It's the people who own the Bitcoin. What actions are they taking? Bitcoin can't get rid of the flaws of human nature. It just can't. I say, "Oh, yeah, it can because you can't make any more of it." Sure you can. You made paper claims on it. You could have fractional reserve banking with Bitcoin as base money. The same way we had with gold. Exact same way. So my point is I don't think we should fall victim in trying to deter or try to think through what the perfect system would be because it doesn't exist and it never will. What we need to do is think about all the imperfect systems and choose the least imperfect. And I think because see what happens, and even with the Austrian school, I've heard them debate back and forth, and they just talk over one another. You've got one side that believes in full reserve banking, and then you've got the other side that believes in fractional reserve banking. And they just go back and forth. And the one side says yes, but we get the boom and bust cycle. The one side says yes, but it hampers growth. Hampers growth, boom bust. Hampers growth, boom bust. Boom. Yeah. Blah 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 blah. Well, right. But so what they're doing, or the mistake I think they're making, is they're trying to figure out a perfect system, and then they're trying to debate why that system. No, that instead of just saying there are no perfect systems, let's just as a group go over the costs and the benefit of both and try to quantify those costs and benefits, and then we can have an intelligent argument instead of just yelling at each other back and forth. And so my point is you got to start from a position of, I think, humility and understanding that you're dealing with the human race here. You're not dealing with perfect, creatures from above here. You're not dealing with divine entities. So, uh, maybe it's a tragic view of the world. I think the best way to describe that is it's really Thomas Sowell's constrained view. He outlined this in a fantastic book, and I can't the Vision of the Anointed, maybe is that it? Anyway, in one of his books, he outlines really the difference between your back then kind of your stereotypical conservative and your stereotypical progressive, and the one has an unconstrained view, and the other has a very constrained view. And I for most things in life, I have a very very constrained view, and I carry that constrained view over to the analysis of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, the banking system, the decentralized dollar, etc. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying this isn't a good idea. I'm just saying that based on the benefits I see, I don't know it's that dramatically better to where it's going to give the current euro dollar monetary system a run for its money. As it is now. Again, maybe it changes, maybe 3, 5 years, it's something that's just infinitely better. We'll have to wait and find out. Just one last thing here. The problem they're really gonna have to the hurdle they're gonna have to overcome here is, how do you have something that's decentralized, but yet maintain the, uh the expansion of the money supply in order to service the expansion of productive lending increase in goods and services. Because if everyone had their money in their back pocket, like the Bitcoiners talk about all the time, that's great from a standpoint of government. I love that. I love it. But you're not going to have very much economic activity, right? How is how are you going to create loans? I mean, there's going to be a way, I'm sure, but a completely decentralized play. And what if people just, what if the majority of the people, for whatever reason, because they're scared of recession, what if they just say, oh, yeah, we're not lending? No, hell no. I'm going to keep my Bitcoin in my back pocket. I'm not lending it out to anybody. Then what happens to the economy? Got to think about these things. What's your advice for someone just starting out in the finance industry? Well, I would read the Market Wizards books first and foremost. So this was a series, I believe a 3-book series by Jack Schwager, where he sat down and he interviewed people like Stan Druckenmiller, like my favorite investor of all time, Mr. Jim Rogers, and Ed Thorpe, Mr. Blackjack, for those of you who know. And for those of you who know my backstory, you know that I counted cards, and I played blackjack, um, and that's one of the things back in the early 2000s that really helped me take my business and my entrepreneurial life to the next level, because it helped me understand probabilities, and that made all the difference in the marketing side of the businesses that I ran from that point moving forward. So I owe a lot of my success to Blackjack, to Ed Thorpe, and to Beat the Dealer, the book. But that's where I'd start. And let's see, any other advice for the finance industry? Maybe just some crazy advice. If you're not exercising right now, I would make sure that you exercise and try to do cardio. If you could do cardio once a day, it's really going to help you. If you could do that in the morning, I've noticed that when I do cardio in the morning, even if it's just like the elliptical machine for a half hour, it gets your blood going, and it helps you think more clearly. And in the finance business, if you want to make your way up the ladder there, I'm assuming that you're going to have to outthink everyone else. And so that's kind of maybe a hack that I'd give you along with those Market Wizards books. And then just make sure that you're always cognizant of global macro, because I think a lot of people in finance, that's a blind spot for them. So make sure that you're continuing to listen to guys like Jeff Snyder and Brent Johnson and Luke Groman and Lynn Alden. And obviously join Rebel Capital's Pro. That's the very best thing you can do. Jake. Yeah, I had to take that one, buddy. That was a softball. All right, but good luck, man. That's exciting. Hey, George, have you read book Next 100 Years? No, I haven't. I'd love to hear your thoughts about. No, no, haven't read that. Sorry. Great interview with Art. What's the likelihood that Venezuela gives the U.S. oil or just the middle finger? I think there's probably a greater likelihood that the U.S. invades Venezuela. Venezuela, and I got this from my good buddy Simon Black over at Sovereign Man. Venezuela has more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. I believe it was 303 billion as of, I don't know as of when, that could have been 6 months ago or something like that. And who knows if these numbers are extremely correct. But based on the numbers we have, Venezuela has got more reserves, just good old fashioned, and not the fracking kind, just the good old fashioned, probably $12 a barrel kind. So think through what's happening in the world right now, and that we're going through this potentially a fourth turning, where the world is getting more and more segregated. I was just reading on, I don't know, Twitter or something today, that Germany is now pissed off at I don't know if it's the United States, but a lot of the allies that are selling Germany, I believe it's LNG, liquid natural gas. They're pissed off because the prices are so high. So it's like, even you see this fragmentation or this fracturing, even with countries who are friendly to one another, the United States and Germany, as an example, or Germany and Sweden, or it's a very volatile time. So if this continues and the United States gets into a position where they're not producing more, and also you have to understand the United States produces a very light, and I think you probably heard this when Art was discussing it. The United States just can't consume their own oil. It's not That's not the way it works, because the oil we have is very light, and the oil you need for most of the oil we consume that is turned into diesel is a more heavy type of oil. Now, does Venezuela have the light or heavy? I don't know. I would assume it's the heavy, but don't bet on that. I'm just kind of taking a guess there. But let's assume for a moment they do have the heavy type, and the United States gets more and more inclusive. Let's say but not just the United States, but the whole world. Every single country starts becoming protectionist and having this mercantile type of worldview. And the United States finds itself in a position where you need energy, and whoever has the most energy is most likely going to win. I've talked to my good buddy Art many times, and he said that's probably what, one of the main reasons we won World War II is because we just had access to more energy. And makes sense once you understand how vital energy is, and once you understand that it is life, and to quote my good buddy Doomberg, and it is the economy, to go back to what Art says. So, I mean, look at how weak and vulnerable Venezuela is right now. And, maybe we don't go in there and invade, but maybe we just orchestrate a coup. Maybe we just pull a Ukraine, right? Ukraine 2014, where we just go in there and I mean, I think a lot of who's the guy? What's the guy's name? Bolton or whatever. I think he would openly admit that we wanted to go in there and we wanted regime change in Ukraine. And I'm not here to say it's good or bad, but I think they'd come out and admitted that. So maybe you do the same thing in Venezuela. You just go in there and orchestrate a coup that's backed by the United States. Obviously, you don't admit this, but behind the scenes is what's going on. And you just say that it's the rebels or whatever. And you just insert a president that's pro US. And that just the very first thing that he does is allow whatever, Exxon or something like that to go in there and start setting up shop and shooting all of that oil right over to the United States. And therefore, we become completely energy sufficient, self sufficient, when you include kind of attaching ourselves to Venezuela or kind of taking them under our umbrella, let's say, to put it nicely. Uh, I think that's something we should think about. Is it a far fetched tinfoil hatter conspiracy theory? Maybe, but so is everything else that we've gotten right over the last 3 years. That's right, So I think it's definitely worth considering and trying to weigh the probabilities because look, if the world keeps going the way it's going, um, I think that would be a very viable option for the United States. I'm not condoning it, but I see how if you're using some game theory, they may implement that as a strategy to maintain the global power they continue to have. So, anyway, food for thought. Yeah. So, what's the likelihood Venezuela gives us oil or middle finger? I mean, listen, if it's Maduro in there, probably middle finger. If it's a coup run by the United States to get in, to overthrow the government and put in someone that's favorable, like Zelensky, right? I mean, he's someone that I don't want to say he was or wasn't because let's just say he could have been someone that was put in there by the United States, and maybe that's a good thing. You could argue, okay, but just do the same thing in Venezuela, where it's not Zelensky, it's Zaloro. How's that for a Venezuelan name? It would be Zaloro or Zalora or something like that. But yeah, this is something I think we should pay a lot of attention to. U.S. strongly signaling they want to start nuclear war with Russia. U.S. false flag nuke event in Ukraine, then blame it on. Can we stop the insanity? Can we? Yes. Will we? I I think the unfortunately I think the probability is low. Now, will it come to that? Obviously, we hope and pray not. I just don't know, how could we have stopped Iraq? We could have. If there would have been enough pushback, that would have done it. Because at the end of the day, the politicians are a slave to public opinion. They are. Unfortunately, those people that are a slave to public opinion can control it to such a great degree through the mainstream media and the useful idiots we were talking about before. But look, if Americans got pissed off enough to where they were going out in the streets and practicing civil disobedience, and George Bush knew that if he made any move in Iraq, he's done. He has a 0% chance of getting reelected. They would have magically come up with a reason to not, oh, sorry. Yeah, the weapons of mass destruction. Oh, we handled it. We fixed it already. So vote for us. That would have been, what's interesting? I sent out a tweet the other day because I'm starting to see nuclear energy as the politician's lifeline, similar to the way I saw. Well, I think by now I can say the words on YouTube. We'll see, but it's similar to what I said about Omicron. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, you probably remember me talking about that in November of 2021, and you probably remember me getting a lot of flack for that as well, where I said that the latest scariant, we'll call it, could be the end of the cerveza sickness. And it was, oh, how can you say it's far more contagious, blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, but as these things progress, usually they become more mild. This one seems like it's going to be more mild. And if it is, that gives the Biden administration, that gives all of these crazy politicians an out. It gives them a lifeline. So what I mean by that is, if you remember, go back to November of 2021. This is when we were full on mandates and vax cards in New York and blah blah blah, and we were forcing the airline pilots to do this, and they were getting a lot of blowback for that. Thank goodness, bravo Americans for standing up like that, because very few societies did. And but a lot of Americans were really pushing back on that. They were not happy, and I think obviously the Biden administration knew that. But what do you do? Like, if you doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on mandates and authoritarianism, how do you kind of back out of that and not lose your voter base? And that's why I said Omicron was that get out of jail free card. Because now what you can do if you're Biden is you can say, oh, well, we're getting rid of these mandates because we're just following the science. We don't need to do them anymore because look, Omicron isn't scary. It's far less blah, 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 blah. And therefore, we're taking the prudent approach. We're going to pull back here. We're going to pull back there, pull back here, which is what they did to a certain degree. And then, so my point is, I see nuclear being that same lifeline where they're doing all these stupid things, but when reality, they should go back to fossil fuels and allow an excess or an additional fossil fuels to fuel, for lack of a better word, the transition to better energy sources, instead of just going cold turkey, where you create all these massive problems that we're seeing now in Europe, as an example, and we'll most likely see in other places. Because at the end of the day, what the politicians have done is they've said, okay, well, let's just eliminate energy. But then they say, oh, wow, you know what? People don't like it when they can't turn on the heat. People don't like it when they're starving to death. People don't like it when their electricity bill goes up tenfold. And, it's one of these maybe intended consequences. But my point is, nuclear gives them a way out to where they don't have to say, oh, we made a mistake. Now all of a sudden we have to go back to coal, or now all of a sudden we have to go back to oil, nat gas, which would be politically unpalatable for those people who are the Greta Thunberg types, they've just doubled down and tripled down on that. They can say, well, we didn't like nuclear, but the new types of nuclear, they'll spin it some way that gives them a way to present it as though they're maintaining their principles, which we know as rebel capitalists, they simply do not have. They're absolutely and utterly void of all principle. But they can pretend that they're sticking to their guns. They're standing up for the environment and they're battling climate change. But now, and nuclear was horrible, very, very bad. And I completely applaud Germany getting rid of nuclear, even though, yes, it did put them into this position to where now they're basically a pawn of Russia, thanks to Gerhard Schroeder. But yeah, we'll forget about that. That nuclear was very, very bad. But this new nuclear, well, this is the solution we've been waiting for. It's green, it's safe, it's blah 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, you'll start to get the green politicians pushing it just as adamantly as they were condemning it no more than 3 or 4 years ago, because they're put in a position where people are just getting too fed up. And people are not going to tolerate their standard of living decreasing to that degree, and they're definitely not going to tolerate their electricity bill going up, or their utility bills going up tenfold per year, and them not being able to afford to put food on the table. That's when people go out and get the pitchforks and the torches, and that's when the politicians, if they've studied history, they know they got problems, big problems. That's what you don't want. So, yeah, I think that uh, there's kind of a silver lining there. And of course, if you saw the interview with Art, you know that nuclear is by no means a panacea. It only handles about, Art said, 18-20% of our energy needs, because so much of the energy that we use is not electricity. So there's a whole retooling of the grid, the way we move goods and services. But at least it's kind of a start. And at least the politicians, I think, will start to move in that direction, because they don't have a choice, and it's the path of least resistance. Just like Omicron was the path of least resistance that gave them the opportunity to pull back on a lot of these insane policies that were becoming very, very unpopular. So going back to your question, boy, I'm really going off on some tangents here today, guys. You'll have to forgive me. But can we stop it? Yeah, we just have to band together and practice civil disobedience. And like I said, if 100 million people would have gone to the street to protest Iraq, Bush would not have gone to Iraq. And so, but do we have enough? Are we pissed off enough as a society? Are we? Do we truly understand the horrors of nuclear war to do that? I don't know, because the United States, we just haven't seen a war for so long that people just, it's like out of sight, out of mind, and they start to think it's just, well, I play this video game, it's just like that. We're just going to drop a couple bombs. I'm never going to know it. I'm just going to watch it on TV, just like I watched Saddam Hussein get mowed down. I'm just gonna. That was on. I remember when that was on TV. Remember when the tanks went in, and that that propaganda guy, what do they call him, Baghdad Bob or something? Remember when he was on TV? And people think that, oh, nuclear war with Russia, oh, yeah, it's just going to be like, I'm just going to watch it on TV. Yeah, it's like watching a video game. I'm just going to do that. Just, maybe pull it up on my Tesla screen while I'm driving down to my job at Starbucks, or it should be fun. They have no idea that we're talking about, you know, potentially something that could quite literally end the human race. And you would think that people would be in the streets right now calling for some sort of peaceful resolution, or just an effort, for heaven's sakes. But look at the mainstream media. We get the opposite. We just get warmongering, 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 and more warmongering. So here's one thing that I want you guys to write down and promise me. Right now, we got over 1,000 people in the live stream. You guys promise me that if, and I pray that we don't, but if there is a nuclear bomb dropped, or if this turns into some type of nuclear hot war, and if we're still around, make sure that you make the people that promoted this pay for the suffering that they are partially, not fully, but partially responsible for. Obviously, Putin and a lot of the governments would be mainly responsible, but the media, the mainstream media, would have to fess up and say this was partially our fault, and they're not going to do that. But we have to make sure that they're held accountable for trying to whip up the American people into a hysteria to where they would actually support this type of insanity, actually risking nuclear war, because they will have a lot of blood on their hands. The talking heads, the mainstream media, all these crazies on Twitter, this moron, what's I think it was that Bolton guy I saw in the news today, came out and just outwardly said that we should assassinate Putin. Like, how can you be this stupid? And the Lindsey Graham dude, he did the same thing, like out on Twitter. What are you? Are you some sort of sadistic moron? Are you that freaking stupid? Like, those types of people, we need to hold them accountable. So, be careful. All these warmongers that think that this is going to just be like Iraq, where we're just going to watch it on TV and the general public. Be careful what you wish for, my friend. Be very careful what you wish for. And I think they can sell this a lot easier because so many people, the millennials and the Gen Zs, didn't grow up during the Cold War. I remember growing up in the Cold War. That was not fun. And you guys that are the baby boomers in my generation, the Gen X, I'm sure you remember what that was like when you're going back and forth with Russia, and there was on constantly, you were in school and on TV, with your parent, you were bombarded with the idea that there could be a nuclear bomb that would go off right next to you, and you would be, I don't know what the right word is, you'd just be instantly turned to dust. I remember having nightmares about that when I was a kid, 5, 6, 7 years old. You seeing the pictures on the TV screen about with the nuclear bomb going up, and then the person on BBC or whatever is talking about how it just makes you just instantly like evaporate or disintegrate or whatever it does. And you see the picture of obviously it's fake, but the picture of the person standing there and it just turns into a pile of dust, like holding the teddy bear. I remember obviously to this day, I remember it vividly. That was not fun. And I think that my point is, if we were, heaven forbid, if the whole population now, if we could go back in time and the whole population had that type of experience growing up in the Cold War, I think there would be a much, much, much different attitude toward what's going on in Ukraine right now. I'll tell you that. And the attitude would be, let's find an off ramp here. Is this horrific? Can we ever condone what Putin did? Absolutely not. But this is one evil government facing off against another evil government with more evil governments in the mix. And the people, the losers are the people, the Ukrainian people, the Russian people, potentially now the Europeans, potentially humanity could be the end loser. And I just, I would never wish upon the millennials and Gen Zs to have experienced what it was like, with those nightmares and whatnot as a kid growing up during the Cold War. But again, I hope that some way that we can present that to them, and so that they understand the degree, the severity of what we are really dealing with here, what we're talking about. This is not Iraq. This is a country that's got 6,000 nukes pointed right at you. Different ballgame. And even if Putin is wrong and terrible and this and this, I get it. I totally get it. But let's just look at our options. Right? Let's look at the world through the lens of reality. using the constrained view, not the unconstrained view. We've got no good options here. And one of them is you eradicate the human race. So let's just go ahead and start by taking that one off the table because anything else is better than that. So that's what I hope to impress upon, the younger people that didn't have to suffer through what we suffered through as young people, or maybe kids if you're Gen X, growing up in that Cold War with that always kind of, you know, in the back of your head. So, oh, boy, I've really gone off on some tangents. It's already been an hour. Shoot. Okay, let me answer one more question here. We'll do some shout outs. Okay, Brendan says, do you see oil and other commodities being cheap enough to short in the short term and begin buying, or should we wait until? I can't tell you what to do, Brendan, but I'm personally waiting because I'm just looking at the yield curve and I'm like, that's not looking good. That doesn't look good for commodities. And I think there's a strong argument that, even if demand collapses significantly, that supply is just not there. I think that's a great argument. But I just don't know that I would be a buyer. At least I'm not a buyer until whatever happens that prompts the Fed to pivot and go back to zero or lower rates, right? The bond market is saying that's going to happen at some point in time. Now, why that happened, I don't know. Is it because inflation just comes down? Is it because we have a massive recession / depression? Is it because we have a black swan event? Is it because we have World War III? I don't know. But that's kind of the line. That's the trigger. That's the catalyst I'm looking for to know that, okay, now is the time to go in. And that other than just looking at a chart and saying, okay, it's cheap. Like copper, gets pretty cheap around 250. I looked at coal, which is one of my favorite commodities. And coal, let me pull up the chart here. I was looking at a chart on trading economics. You guys can just Google it. And you see that coal, shoot, I don't have it pulled up right now. But anyway, you see that coal, I think around 150, if my memory serves me right, you get some technical resistance. So I don't know that you'll ever get coal cheap again, quote unquote. But I would. That's kind of the line in the sand. That's kind of the watch list. That's my price point for that watch list. Is right around 150 with coal. And I'm not saying I'm buying there, but that's when I start kicking tires and start considering it seriously. But that said, as you guys know, long term, I think that we are in a commodity super cycle, and but nothing goes up in a straight line, right? I always look at the inflation. I think the 1940s could be kind of a playbook. Not that we'll get the exact same things, but the way inflation worked in the 40s, I think we could see that in the 2020s, where for 3 years you have it at 20%, and then the next year you get some crazy thing that happens and it drops to deflation of 3%. And then it goes right back up and skyrockets again because of something else. I think we're going to get price controls. I think price controls are going to bring inflation down, obviously. But then once those price controls are released, boom, you see it skyrocket higher. And it's just that's what I think we're going to deal with. So I think that the commodity space is going to be almost as volatile. And you're going to be able to make a lot of money just so long as you're extremely disciplined. And that's what I'm trying to be right now. All right, guys, let's do some shout outs here. Then I got to get over to the Rebel Capitalist Pro members. Again, you can check that out at georgegammon.com/pro. All right, we've got Joe Dyke in the house. We've got R. Petrick. George W. Bush in the house. There's the man himself. We were just talking about you, Mr. Bush. Second Horizon, Becky B. All-Nighter Hider in the house. St. Louis the Fourth. I don't know my Roman numerals. JB. Oh, where'd JB go? John Doe, Wayne Smith, Casey Sunshine, Market Mania in the house. All my good buddies. JB ATL. So maybe JB Atlanta. David Lamar, Val Rendang, Alfred, Doc Fish, RR, Matt Bittner, Frogadelic Research Group, Flexing 4, Isaac N4413, G3 Power Book 335, Paul Busby, S3 RIOUS L33, probably a bot. Wayne Smith, Charles. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me this evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you on the next video.